Welcome to In Our Own Defense podcast. We're your hosts, Attorney A.D. Winters, founder and managing attorney at veteransdefender.com, and Dr. Dolores Tarver, licensed psychologist. For more information about our show, go to In Our Own Defense on Instagram or Gmail at inourowndefense@gmail or Facebook at In Our Own Defense, or our new YouTube channel at In Our Own Defense to learn more about our network here. So in this podcast, our mission is to share truths and create a dialogue that increases our listeners' awareness of a variety of concerns to foster development of a holistic plan which incorporates mental, physical, spiritual, financial, and intellectual wellness. Dr. Tarver?
The information provided during the In Our Own Defense podcast does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice and is not a substitute for the knowledge, skill, and judgment of qualified mental health or medical care professionals. Instead, all information, content, and materials available on this podcast are for general informational purposes only.
Well, welcome to another show, Dr. Tarver. How have you been?
I've been great. Thanks for asking. How about you?
I've been well. Really excited, working out a lot, running a lot, getting my miles up. In this two-part episode of In Our Own Defense podcast, I'm really excited about it because we really get to test my waters and my information from veteransdefender.com and that the military experience. And we have the luxury of having very talented and intelligent leaders, like a lawyer leader, Mr. Quintillis Lawrence, a former commissioner in Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge Parish since 19 JDC. Great mentor for me in the practice of law. He's also a judge advocate in the United States Army Reserves, all 29 years, but we'll get to his bio in a second. And we have Randolph and Lori Chestang. Randy Chestang was in Navy ROTC while I was in Army ROTC at the Southern University. So it's always got to be a Southern University connection to it. And he was a stellar leader. And I just found him to be a great mentor because he had all of the experience with over 30 years. And he has his bride with him, Miss Lori Chestang, commanders, both of them in their own right, exceptional military leaders. So we get the chance to dive into this really pressing issues. And the reason why it's so pressing, Dr. Tarver, is recently this concept has come about, and we've started to see the awakening of America having a reckoning with this racial past and how it's happened in the news. And now it's coming across all of those dimensions of racism that we discussed on some of these previous shows. So in this show of Justice June, we really get to talk about something that I have pride in. I'm from 200 combined years of Army service. And my family's an Army family. And so been in for 100 years consistently. And so, you know, we have a mantra in our family, like this will defend. This is our country it's been our country since the Redoubt 9 and 10 at Yorktown when we won the battle to start this country. It's been our country when Christmas Attucks was shot. It's been our country in the Civil War, but the 54th Massachusetts has been our country in every war since then, Spanish American, in every war. And so my family is proud. And we take that to honor, defend this country against all its enemies, foreign and domestic. Every African American takes that oath. And we're in wars today in Afghanistan, Iraq, and even in the coin and cyber and space wars we're in. And there's three major articles that have been coming out. The United States Marine has confronted the Confederate flag and said they have banned it throughout the United States Marine Corps. You can't have it on a cup. You can't have it anywhere on a bumper sticker on your vehicle. And that's pretty telling. The Marines normally step out front, and it's hard for the Marines to live a warrior ethos of once a Marine, always a Marine, all Marines that matter, and then they would have that. So that's pretty promising that the Marines have done that. It's pretty promising that the Department of Defense, the Secretary and the Secretary of the Army are saying that they are ready to willing and to rename these Army bases. They wanted to get help from Congress. Unfortunately, the 1600 Pennsylvania resident the president is saying that he's not for changing the name on it, but I think there's a lot more momentum in the overall citizenry to get those names changed. And most recently, there's been article after article after article that I've read and researched about racism in the military. But most recently, the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, laid out a report a few years ago where it stated that the DOD and the Coast Guard need to improve their capabilities to assess racial and gender disparities. And this was telling in that the four major services, the three-star generals that represent them, went before Congress. The three JAG lawyers, the three-star generals that are all JAG lawyers, went before Congress and admitted that there's a racial disparity in the administration of justice, whether it's non-judicial or judicial punishment. It overwhelmingly, for the conduct, same conduct, it's overwhelmingly harsher against African American and females. And so I'm concerned about this. I thought instead of just speculating or getting upset about it, I'd rather have some talented people here with me to help us unpack this. And then I'm just really concerned about, if I said I raise my right hand to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic, what does that do to me if I believe that, how can I fully serve my country if I feel that my country is going to potentially do something to me? What does that do to my psychology? What does that do to my mental, Dr. Tarver? And I want you to help us unpack what that may do to someone. So I know that was a lot.
Yes, it was.
I needed to set the scene and lay that backdrop for us to get to this, because I don't want us to, it's so much to, we can't cover it all, but I want us to at least have a good old college try at addressing this. So what are your thoughts?
We're going to have to talk off show about you posing one question and allowing me to answer it as opposed to at one time. Okay. I am very happy to have our guest on the show today, because this is an area that I think sometimes gets neglected when we talk about race, and that is in our United States military. And we're going to talk about the experiences that how can your family not be affected? How can you come back from have had an experience in combat and think that you won't be altered, you won't be changed? How can you have experiences where you see people mistreated because of their ethnicity and it not affect you? I don't think we can have a conversation in Justice June about race if we don't talk about the military and its effects on those of you that have served and are serving currently. And so there is no short answer to the many questions you just posed to me. But we'll get into some of the effects that end up happening with people with regard to their mental health. When dealing with this, we talked about the effect of cumulative trauma last week and how I have to deal with racism, I have to deal with what's going on in the military, I have to deal with what's going on in the world, and those are all stacked on me. So of course I'm going to have some mental health concerns after that. They may be mild or they may be more severe, and they need to be addressed. And then I think the other piece is the struggle that I think sometimes people experience when you take that oath to serve and protect your country, and then you get faced with some uncomfortable things about the history, how we got here, and the cognitive dissonance that occurs when I don't want to be uncomfortable with hearing this factual information about how people are mistreated in this service organization that I love. And so I'm just going to kind of distance myself from that information and focus on this other thing over here. So let me hold tight to protecting this Confederate flag. Let me hold tight to continuing to have these military installations named after people in the Confederacy, because I'm much more comfortable with that than the legacy that allowed them to get to that place. So I'm going to unpack some of that tonight. I know we can't get to everything, but I know that you have a great panel of guests that are going to be sharing a variety of experiences with us. And so I'm excited to get into the discussion.
Well, without further ado, let's get in and introduce, and I'll introduce our first guest, and you can introduce next. Quintillis Lawrence. He's originally from Michigan, Saginaw. He's a graduate of the Southern University, New Orleans, that great Southern University system. He graduated in political science in 1998 from undergrad, and he earned his Juris Doctorate from the Southern University Law Center in 2001. He was an upperclassman as I was entering the Law Center, and always carried himself with a seriousness of purpose. And he is currently an adjunct professor in criminal procedure there, which is one of those big key bar exams. He's a member of various organizations to include Alpha Phi Alpha, Fraternity Incorporated, Armed Officers Association, Veterans of Foreign Wars, Louisiana Law Institute. He's a former district attorney, and he's a former district attorney and public defender. And he even served as a commissioner, which is a magistrate judge for the 19 JDC for 6 years. He practiced law, private law 10 years before that, and he currently is running for judge, which I pray God that he gets elected. Quintillis is, like I said, a judge advocate in the United States Army Reserve with 29 years of service.
Well, it is my great pleasure to introduce, and I won't be able to do it justice, our Commanders Chestang, who I just want to point out are sitting here with their two adorable children, and they are managing this interview and this discussion with their kids. And to me, that speaks volumes, just who they are as family members, but also service men and women. And I just couldn't be more proud that you have your family here to share in this moment. So I'll just take that executive privilege. So let me get to your bios. So Commander Randolph Chestang the fourth is, he hails from Bassfield, Mississippi, and he enlisted in the United States Navy in 1991 and 1999. He graduated from Southern University. Attorney Winters has to find ways to bring Southernites to this show. He's discriminating against Xavier Rice, but we'll get to that another day. And he has a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering and was commissioned through the U.S. Navy ROTC program. At sea, Commander Chestang has served as Damage Control Assistant in USS Elrod, Operations Officer in USS Chief Operations Officer in USS Stephen Groves. There's so many, so I know that you all can look at his bio. But he is currently assigned to National Defense University in Washington, D.C. as a joint instructor. He's also completed his postgraduate degree while assigned to Naval War College, Newport, earning a Master's of Arts in National Security and Strategic Studies and JPME phases 1 and 2. He has a lot of awards that I know that he probably doesn't want to hear me tell everybody about. So his beautiful wife, Lori Chestang, who is also a commander, and she hails from Evans, Georgia, and is 2003 Selman College Political Science graduate and commissioned through the Morehouse NROTC unit. Her sea tours include a variety of things as well: Ordnance Officer in USS Benfold, Reactor Controls Division Officer in USS Enterprise, where she was part of the decommissioning crew of USS Underwood, and also she was Operations and Chief Executive Officer for USS Hugh City. Ashore, she completed the curriculum at both the Naval Nuclear Power Training Unit and Command in Charleston, South Carolina, and served as a nuclear trained officer at Navy Recruit Region East in Millington, Tennessee. Currently, she is the Deputy Director of Administration for Director Navy Staff in Washington, D.C., and she also holds a Master of Arts degree in National Security and Strategic Studies from the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island, and she also has several personal awards as well that we'll make sure to highlight.
Well, good deal. Well, so Dr. Tarver, join me in welcoming our guests. Welcome to the show. Welcome to our own event. And, you know, as we get started, there's a really important question that I have to ask before I pass it over to Dr. Tarver is, where did y'all get those babies, those wonderful little motorcycles that they were driving on? Because I was so jealous that I kept trying to find it so I can go buy one for Scott.
So Grandma and Grandpa, Gigi and G-Pops surprised us, and they came from, I think it's Kids Zone. Kids Zone. That's on the back of the little bumper cars.
Yeah,
Kids Zone bumper cars.
Yeah, Kids Zone bumper cars. I get so jealous about the smallest things, and Dr. Tarver, no, I try to get Scott everything. So
yes, oh my gosh.
Gotta get that. I'm sorry, Dr. Tarver, go ahead.
Well, again, welcome everyone, and we are happy to have our village today. It makes me feel wonderful to see. Now, this is not my area, so please forgive me if I stumbled over your bios trying to pronounce all of these things that I am very unfamiliar with, but hopefully those who are active duty and veterans understood what I was saying. So I want to ask you all a question, and I think it's fitting that you're here with your adorable children to ask this. So people frequently come in when they see me in therapy, and they make the statement, I wish I would have known. Before I joined the military, I wish I would have known this, right? I see you shaking your head, Commander Lori. And so I would like to ask you all, what are some of the things that you wish that you would have known before you entered into the military? What advice can you give to families whose people may be making this military, and also people who in the military and have children? What things would you like to tell them? Like, hey, if I had known during my time of service.
So, sorry,
The
I think
kids,
my son would like to answer as well.
absolutely.
Gosh, a few things that I wish I would have known, and I think especially now, given the climate and everything that's going on, I wished I would have known that racism is still a very real thing in the military. And by that, I mean, so I too come from a military family. My dad, he was enlisted in the Army. My grandmother was enlisted in the Army. That's where she met my grandfather. And growing up, you know, my father, he was military intelligence. He was a linguist, fluent in Italian and Arabic. And he would tell me stories of the things that he faced, being one of, I think, only maybe 5 Black linguists in the military at that time. And I think when I came up and I was ready to join, you know, because of his experiences, and I would often go to work with him, things that I saw, like the first female officer that I saw was in the Army, and that gave me great hope. So I came in thinking that I was naive in thinking that the experiences that he experienced were things of the past, right? I came in thinking that even though the rest of the world, was still facing racism, that the military would be, you know, that golden city on the hill, and racism and sexism just didn't exist there. I was wrong. Let me be clear, I'm not saying that the military organization is racist. I'm saying that there are people in the military who are racist. So I wish I would have known that. I would have gone in with my eyes a little bit more wide open. I think I would have been better prepared to deal with some of the situations that I had to deal with. I also wish I would have known that there are still trailblazers in the military to this day. Oftentimes we think that in 2020, there's so many people who have still done so many things that no one is the first. That is not true. And if you're familiar with military news, there are plenty of firsts, and including women on submarines, women in the nuclear field in the military. I actually know the first, so we are still blazing trails there. So yeah, I wish I would have known that the military was not the utopia that I was hoping that it would be, and that there are still trailblazers. So if you join, you may be the first to do something, and you should be prepared for that.
So what are some of the things that you would say to, because I think that's very powerful to say to people, like, you still may be a first. As yes. Right? Because I think people many of us are probably comfortable thinking we won't be the first at anything anymore. Like, there's surely someone who has gone before me here in 2020 that trailblazer. What is a follow-up? What would you say to help prepare them for that mentally? Because that can be a tough experience for someone to have, to walk into a situation where you describe, like, hey, I thought this was this utopia, and then I realized, okay, it's not. So what would you offer as advice to people to help them prepare for that journey?
I would say, me being a spiritual person, you need to be prepared to talk to God more than you ever have before. and have real conversations with God. You know, Jesus, I'm here. I hope you're listening. It's me again for the 5th time today. But definitely, you know, you have to, if you are a spiritual person, you have to be willing to get in touch with whatever force, whatever you believe in, to help you get through, and to not be ashamed of that. Because, you know, and sometimes, especially in the military, I think we feel like we have to be strong all the time, and maybe having faith is a show of weakness, but it's not. Having faith is actually, it's quite powerful, and it's very strong. So absolutely get in touch with your faith. Find things that will help take your mind off of the tough situations. Like a hobby, or if you like to read, you know, when you go on deployment, bring some books with you. Be prepared to allow yourself to have a little alone time to decompress. And whatever happens, try not to make things personal. It's difficult. Sometimes you do feel like it's personal, and to be quite frank, sometimes things are personal. But try not to carry that. Try not to carry it home. It will age you. It will stress you out. And it just isn't good for your soul, you know? So find the things that will help you get through the hard times. So lean on your faith, lean on your family. If you are very close to your parents, remain close. If you're not close to your family members or your parents, it might be a time to work on that relationship. Because sometimes when you are out there, even though when we go out on deployment, we consider that our family, you might find that you're feeling very alone. And it's just nice to be able to reach back to your family and talk to someone who is familiar with you. So yeah, absolutely. Lean on your faith, lean on your family, and find something to keep your mind off things and help get through those hard times.
Those are some great recommendations. I want to make sure that I give the opportunity to share too, because I know that your experiences may be different in terms of what advice that you would offer. So I will also to you, Commander Randy, and also to you, Attorney Lawrence, to both answer those questions as well. What recommendations would you have for someone coming into the military? What do you wish you would have known?
Okay, so, you know, as for me, you know, going to a HBCU, you think, man, this is great. I have a family, a unit. This is going to be a good thing coming into the military. And as an officer, you'll find sometimes that you may be the only one representing in whatever division, ship, or whatever position of leadership where you're working. And that's a challenge. It could be a challenge where you used to being around people like Winners and everybody, you know, in multitude, you know, and you get out there and now it's just you. And like Lori said, you know, you have to find somebody that you can talk to every now and again, because sometimes you're going to feel alone. I would tell people, you know, that although the military presents, you know, a utopia type of idea to the world, the biases do exist. They do. And I'm not speaking for the Navy. This is just from my own personal experience, you know, but they do look at you and they'll group you based off of what they think. And so I would advise people coming in to never give your position away. Never give your true self away. Come in and to do your job and be the best at your job you can be. And as long as you do that and keep the emotion out of it, you'll be fine to some degree. Now, the other thing that I wish I'd have known coming in that I didn't know, that I wish I'd have known is that even if you work the hardest and you do your best and you follow the rules and the instructions, you do all those things, sometimes that's not enough to get you through. You know, sometimes they're going to use whatever they can against you, whether that's what they think, what they heard, or something that you did that they just didn't like. And so you have to know that. And I'm not sure, you know, if that's due to, you know, racial issues and things like that. But if you're not one of their guys or girls, it's a challenge and you will not overcome it. And so those are the things you have to tell people. Go in and do your best. Do the best you can do. And then you see how it goes. Cover yourself.
Yeah, I agree. Commander Chastain indicated that most of the time you will be the only one. Yes, as a JAG, there are the number of JAGs that are minority are much smaller in the armed forces than the percentage that is actually out there in civilian society. We're the minority in the profession, but when it comes to being in the JAG Corps, we are very, very few. We have an organization that is called Buffalo Jags, where we try to bounce things off of one another to keep that camaraderie. But when we're in our units, we are solo. I go to the JAG school every now and again, and you see across the room, there's this big auditorium, and there may be 7 or 8 that are in there, and you'll see one of the professors may be a minority. So, you know, we always have the, hey, how you doing? And try to get together and have some type of, you know, mentorship for the senior officers, telling the junior officers, hey, this is what you need to do. These are the things you make sure you get accomplished so that you can keep your career going forward, your trajectory forward, as opposed to getting stagnant. The Army has its own, these are the examples of the things that you should do in order to move forward. But there are some other things that we must do. We must make sure that we are towing the line. On the active duty side, there is a Colonel Leo Butler, who wrote a paper in the Army War College, and it was entitled Why Black Officers Fail. He ended up being a major general, but one of the things that he talked about was that Black officers usually come from the enlisted corps. And when we come into the officer corps, we tend to still want to have that enlisted camaraderie, and that must stop. Also, that we don't like to, quote, play the game. When the general has a call and he or she says, hey, I'm having a Christmas party, we need to go. One of the things, it's not in the regulation, but officers don't wear mustaches. So a lot of Black officers we shave our beards off, but we keep our little mustache. Well, it's an unwritten rule that officers don't wear mustaches. And those are some of the things that I would tell someone who wants to come in. It's like, you gotta play the game. Unfortunately, you have to play the game. You can't, like Commander Chastain said, you can't tell them who your true self is. And that goes for both what you're thinking, what your thought process is, and how you present yourself. We go to family readiness events, and one of my good friends, who's a lieutenant colonel, he says, look, when you come to these things, he likes to wear sweatsuits and things like that. But we know that when we go to those things, it's khakis and boat shoes and a polo style shirt. You can't be your, quote, true self. Can't be as relaxed as you was. It's just like when we're hanging around with one another, we have a relaxed tongue. But you know, when you're in a professional environment, you don't have that relaxed tongue. So I would tell those people who want to come in that are considering being an officer, especially, and even an enlisted person, because sometimes when you become an NCO, a senior NCO, you still got to abide by those same rules, because you're in the same decision-making rooms as the officers, because you're the senior enlisted advisor to that officer. So you got to play the same game. And what I wish I had known was that. I wish I had known that before I came in. I wish I had known those things that both Commanders Chastain had advised us of, that they would tell people thinking that they wanted to come into the military. I wish I had known those things, because then you can better chart your path forward. Because some people, they come into the military for a career. Some come in just as a stepping stone for what they know they can get out of the military, because we know that in the military you get some darn good training. and you get some skills that most people that go into civilian society in their first job, they don't get. We're thrown in the fire, and they come out, and most people, they look at soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and coasties as leaders. And so I wish I had known that before I entered.
I want to kind of ask, because all of you, Commissioner Lawrence and Commander Chestang, all of you mentioned these, even within your rules, your regulations, your military guidebook, if you will. Even beyond that, there are these other things that Black people may have to deal with, these unspoken rules that you're following, that you figure out, it sounds like, along the way, like, okay, so we have to be mindful of how we dress, how we wear the facial hair, how we probably wear our hair, how we interact when we go out places, that it's not optional for us to go to this social engagement. That is something that really, if we want to be able to move up in our career, we need to do. How does that affect your mental health? So you're balancing all of these things, all of being first, looking around and not seeing very many people that look like you, not knowing this information when you go in, and probably, I imagine, feeling a range of emotions when you figure it out, okay? So the rules for me may be a little different. How does that affect your mental health? And the second part of that is, when my mental health is affected, then how is that viewed within the military in terms of me getting some support around what I may be dealing with?
So I'll let Lori go first.
It's a little busy. They refuse to go to bed today. It can be difficult. For me, it wasn't so much, not really. I never felt like I was not able to be my true self. I felt like I was obviously there, and so I was watched all of the time, right? One of the stories that I like to use, when I was going through nuclear power school, there was a day, I think we were getting close to graduation, and everyone, not everyone, there were a few people who were like, let's skip a day, let's skip, because we had to do something in the auditorium. I don't remember what it was. And I looked at them, and it was like 3 or 4 white guys, and I was like, thanks for thinking about me, but I can't skip. And they're like, what do you mean? Come on, it's gonna be fun. We're doing it, nobody's gonna notice. No, yes, they will. They won't notice 4 white guys missing out of a room of 100. But if there's 3 Black females in the room, they're going to miss 1, right? So, having that constant pressure of feeling like someone is always watching you, that is difficult. You did mention, your hair and your nails, and people don't realize sometimes something as trivial as your hair color, your nail color in the military. Not only does it affect your mental health, but it also affects your work ethic, the way in which you work. If you are a young lady, and not just, being a Black woman or a white woman, but again, Black women tend to stick out more. If you're constantly worried about, is my hair color considered natural, or is my hairstyle within regulations, or someone is constantly coming up to you, asking you, is your hair color okay? Or is that nail color complementary to your skin tone? Now all of a sudden, I'm not focused on getting my job done. I'm focused on, oh my goodness, what's wrong with my nails? What's wrong with my hair? And that makes me less productive as a military member. Thankfully, the military, and just last year, the Navy has expanded hairstyles for women, specifically to help Black women, to allow us to wear more natural hairstyles. We're starting to move away from things that are complementary to the skin tone, thank goodness. But it absolutely does have an effect on your work ethic. It has an effect on your mental health. The follow-up question with that, I will say the perception of receiving mental health has definitely improved, at least on the Navy side. I don't want to, step into other military services that I'm not familiar with, but on the Navy side, it has definitely improved. Improvements, we started to see those, I started to see them probably about 5 years ago, but now within the last couple of years, things have definitely ramped up. There's much more talk about suicide awareness and prevention. There's more of a movement trying to get away from mental health as there's something wrong with you, and trying to get people the help that they need. There used to be a stigma where if you went to a mental health professional, and you got what they called happy pills, your career is over, you're going off the ship, you can't go on deployment. The Navy has moved away from that, and I'm proud to say that they have moved away from that. They absolutely want to reach out, help you. There are resources out there to help personnel get the mental health that they need. So it's definitely been an improvement. Obviously, we are not there 100%, but we are, when it comes to mental health, moving in the right direction for sure.
All right.
I love the tag teaming. I love it.
Yeah, one of them was down in the bed, so we got one, but so we got one left. But for me, I'll say that early on it was a real challenge coming straight out of college, transitioning from the enlisted side to the officer side. I was used to being with the guys and hanging out and playing video games, going to the gym, playing basketball, and then we stepped into what you call the wardroom on the ship, where it's the officer cadre, and I was the only one. And they wanted to go to things like Irish pubs and that kind of stuff, and I had never done that. Not going to Southern University or anything like that. What would I go to an Irish pub for? Why would I listen to country music, and know all the words and get happy about it? Although I knew some country songs, they knew all of the country songs. So I always felt out of place, and so you become a little isolated, which challenged you professionally. It challenged you personally. It also, over time, I thought it affected me physically because you gave so much trying to figure out how to get to a win professionally. And so early on, it affected me, but I found it within me that I had to overcome that. I needed to prove, that I was worthy to be there. I needed to prove that I knew as much as anybody else. And so I worked hard, and when my time came, and they sure enough made me the last person to get my qualification. Not that I deserved it. That's just what happened, and I earned it. And then the captain ended up saying, this was the best board that I've had. Well, sir, I was ready months ago. You just passed me over because you told me I was lazy. You told me I couldn't do these things. You told me I didn't understand these things, and I had to deal with that. And so once I made it, I felt good about it. So that's the way I took on every other challenge after that. I knew that I had to go in every job, proving myself and being better than the next man. So I took it upon myself to say, okay, whatever you come at me with, I'm going to show you that is not me. And that's how I overcame it.
What is your perception of how, before you start, Commissioner Lawrence, what is your perception of how mental health is viewed?
So early on, it was a negative stigma, but over the last 3 years, it's changed a lot. The Navy definitely wants to help people. They want to give you the support that you need, and there's a lot of training, a lot of resources set aside for that. And we want to make sure that we're taking care of the sailor and the leaders, and because we've had leaders commit suicide and things like that as well. And I mean, the Navy has took a big rudder shift in how they approach mental health, which is good. You know, we want the sailors to know that we're there for them. That's what we're supposed to do as leaders. And I think we're finally coming to a place where sailors feel like they belong no matter how they feel.
You got the two largest forces represented here tonight, the Army and the Navy, and it's my opinion. This is definitely not something that's gospel that you can take to the bank, but so goes the Navy and the Army, so goes the rest of the Department of Defense. And both the Navy and the Army have taken those steps to ensure that after global war on terror, people were returning. We had a serious issue with service members committing suicide, service members having issues wherein they were substance abuse, mental health issues, all because of what we felt was a lack of what the Army, the Navy, the Department of Defense felt was a lack of help given to their service members. Like Commander Chastain said, the stigma attached to it prior was a career killer, and if it wasn't, people thought it was a career killer. But a part of the new program, at least that the Army has rolled out, they tell you this is not something that's going to affect you negatively. This is something that's going to affect you positively, because it's going to give you the tools necessary so that you can go out and you can get the help you need. One of the examples, because the chaplain is in charge of our program for suicide prevention. And one of the examples that most of the chaplains give when they give this yearly mandatory briefing is, if you have a broken leg, what are you going to do? And everybody answers, I'm going to go to the hospital. So the same goes for your mental health. If you have issues that you're dealing with, go to the doctor. So I think that the Army has done a decent job of attacking this issue. It's not a one size fits all, but it's a start, and it helps. I mean, we still have people doing the suicide challenge, giving 22 push-ups because of the 22 veterans that commit suicide a day. And this is some 15, 20 years post the start of these suicide prevention programs. The Army's also rolled out a master resiliency course, where in addition to the suicide prevention, they give you, or try to give you, the tools to be able to deal with the things that come at you. They send certain persons to the course and they become master resiliency trainers, and they give segments of the course throughout the year, throughout the course of the training year, or throughout the calendar year, to the service members, so that they can have those tools to be able to deal with the issues that they're confronted with. Some of the things that I dealt with was being that solo person, being that only person, being an NCO, being an enlisted person. I can't say I had any issues, because I was a part of the crew. You know, we can hang out. You're an NCO, you can hang with the soldiers, you can go out to wherever place you want to go with them, and it's all good. But as a JAG officer specifically, because as I said before, not many of us want to go into the armed forces as JAGs. Not many people, because, you know, when you become a lawyer, most lawyers think that, hey, I'm gonna go hang my shingle and I'm gonna do this rainmaker thing, and I'm gonna go make $1 million. Most don't think I'm gonna go into the Army and be a JAG. I mean, the show JAG ain't what we do. Not many of us are flying aircraft and investigating incidents. We're doing environmental law, we're doing contract law, we're doing military justice, we're doing national security law. So it's now, for me, it's very sexy. I like all of that stuff. But for a guy coming out of law school, that's not something that he or she is looking to do on their first job. So being that only person, it sometimes made me second guess whether or not I had what it took to make the ranks, to continue to elevate. Because my first job, I was trial counsel, but never given the trial counsel jobs. And the trial counsel is a very serious job. That's the person who advises the company commanders. That's the person who does the prosecution. That's the person who does all the advising of the battalion commanders. Because in the Army, JAGs are at the brigade and above level. Brigade, 1-star, 2-star. There are no JAGs in the battalions and the companies. So the trial counsel is advising the battalion commander. Trial counsel is advising the company commander, but they wouldn't let me do it. They would be the ones to do it. For me, it felt like, because I'm the black JAG. I'm the only one. Everybody else in there is not a minority. No one else. When another came in, they quickly packed their bags and left and went to another unit. So that was what made me feel some type of trepidation as it relates to my abilities. But then I got an opportunity to become a brigade judge advocate, and I realized I know this stuff, and I know this stuff a lot better than some of those guys who were my supervisors, who were my, my bosses. So it was tough, but and family. If it wasn't for family, I probably wouldn't still be doing it, because they're the ones that support you and give you the confidence to know you can do anything, because you've shown it in other areas that you got this. So
I want to just thank you all for sharing those experiences. It sounds like support is really important. How you see yourself and your worth is really important. And being able to find some kind of community where you can have a safe space to talk or be able to get any kind of help that you need is really important. Attorney Winters?
I agree, Dr. Tarver. This is really exciting. And, these conversations touch me. I'm glad that I saw it, exactly what they're saying. Watch those, being the only one in the room, being the only one on staff, advising the general, advising these ambassadors, trying to, get them to go to the right direction of this human experience. Because that's at the end of the day that I think our guests are articulating, is that at the end of it is there's still a human toll that it takes on you. It takes on your family. It takes on your ability, makes you second guess your own psyche. And when it's simply, you're the best, you're talented, you have these gifts, you have these skills, and they just need to come through and shine. That was really touching. I'm so glad you brought that out. I want us to take a small break, because we're going to come back and I want to talk about these things that are in the news. But I think it's important that we unpack it from a mental health standpoint, so we can look at it and watch what that could be doing to these soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines as they're experiencing their service, as they're going through to get to where you guys are already at. So I think that's important. So to our listeners, you're joining us on Our Own Defense podcast. And today we're discussing racial discrimination in the military and UCMJ. We have our special guests with us today, the Chestangs, both commanders in the United States Navy, and former Commissioner Quintillis Lawrence, attorney and judge advocate in the United States Army. We're lucky to have it. So Dr. Tarver and I will be right back. Thank you.